One problem facing people at many levels of business is how to make time for a work life and a personal life. Do you find that one seems to keep getting in the way of the other? This is the Work-Life Balance with Rick Morris. Even if you're not involved in the business world, you'll have a lot to gain by tuning in to today's show. Now, here is your host, Rick Morris.
And welcome to another edition of the Work-Life Balance this Friday afternoon. We're so excited to have you guys along with us. We've got a fantastic guest, and we can't wait to get to him. It's been a crazy week, as it always has. We actually spoke at the PMI Birmingham conference on Monday. That was a fantastic turnout. It was always fun to speak at my home chapter. So it was a symposium that I actually started 10 years ago. And so we had our 10-year anniversary. It's nice to see that still going and still running, especially at a chapter they said couldn't support a symposium. So that was a fun time. We brought Cooper Smith, who was on our show probably about 6 or 8 weeks ago. So he was our keynote speaker. And I was the closing keynote, so we had a lot of fun at that. And then yesterday was on the virtual summit for Computer Associates, or CA Technologies. And so you can go find that out at Bright Talk. But we did the struggle between project management and Agile and had a lot of fun with that session. So those were all the speaking engagements we did this week. We've got a lot of stuff coming up in the coming weeks, but you can always find that at rickamorris.com and find out where we're going to be, where we're going to be going. But let's jump into today's guest. So this gentleman is a great friend of mine. We actually went to Costa Rica together. We're in Orlando often with each other. He's a highly sought after leadership and human potential speaker, trainer, and coach. In 2007, he felt the calling to leave his 22-year career in leadership for some of the top Fortune 100 companies to focus on finding a way to add more value to people. His passion for helping people led him to really find and become the president of his own leadership and personal development training, speaking, and coaching company. This is called the McAuliffe Group. He specializes in leadership development and effectiveness, mental performance, creating high-performance cultures of excellence, and helping clients live full out in their professional and personal lives. Now, he's very focused, some say obsessed, in becoming the best he can be, so he can bring the very best out there from his clients, really. And he's the founding partner of the John Maxwell team and has served on the executive committee and president's advisory council for the past 5 years. He's certified in life mastery consultant, Robbins, I don't even know half of this stuff, right? Certified human behavior consultant like myself, certified TTI, success insights, DISC consultant, certified behaviors. Look, the guy knows absolutely what he's talking about, and I love him to death. Let's bring him to the show, Mark McAuliffe. How you doing, Mark?
Hey, Rick. Good afternoon, buddy. I'm great. And you?
I'm doing fantastic. Look, this has been a long time in the making, man. I've been trying to get you scheduled on the show for quite some time. I can't wait for you to share with the audience. But talk a little bit, just more of a lead-in of yourself and just what you've been doing over the last few months.
Well, the last few months have been really, it's a creative process, and then actually in a little transformational aspect, personally and professionally. But you and I know each other from the leadership world and from the John Maxwell team. And one of the things that I really have noticed from the client 7-8 years is we're teaching them some great skills, and we're teaching them a lot of great information. And we're actually getting them to take action and put into action. But what do we do when we're not there with them, or when the kind of the yogurt of life hits the fan, is really the mental performance side of things, and really keying in on what are mental triggers, what is it that we're focused on, and what our conditions and circumstances are really kind of bringing about. Excuse me. And how do we deal with that whenever in the moment and in the instance of time, whether it's in a professional athlete, whether it's in the military, whether it's in high stress environments of sales, or in the corporate world, or even whenever we're at home and the events in life start to take place. How do we deal with that in that present moment, in that microsecond of time, and really taking a deep dive on that mental performance side of things, and brought about a couple different changes. Excuse me. In our extreme focus offerings, but really that it's the same story, really trying to really help people connect to their true potential and the courage to make that a reality, and then give them tools, resources, support, and accountability to really make that courage that they need to stay there and connect to it to make it a reality, but the tools to actually stay in the moment and be fully present as they go forward. So we've transitioned some of that technologies into extreme focus And the Be a Beast programs that we're launching, the boot camps here, actually coming up next couple of weeks in June at the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs.
Oh, that sounds exciting. You used to call that Be a Beast, correct?
Be a Beast. My good buddy Dave Austin is the co-author of that and founder of Be a Beast Principles. And we've partnered together over the last several years, but have really decided to take this out of just the athletic world and bring it into the corporate and personal life aspects of my clients and actually globally. So that's what we're developing and executing on.
So let's talk about mental focus for a second. And you and I were sharing with each other and visiting before the show. And I even shared with you very personally. And one of the things I do on the show quite often is be very vulnerable and just share what's going on in my life and what's happening, maybe sometimes too much for my audience to handle. But, we were talking about negative spirals can compound on each other. So you can be a leadership coach. You can be somebody that's in business and get caught into your own negative spiral like I was for the last week and a half, really. And it seems to compound on itself. So is that some of the things that you work with in this mental focus and what you're really, pushing for with the people that you coach?
Yeah. One of the tools specifically, and one of the key components, if you looked at the kind of the 3 points you and I talked about that you posted on the site, what are two tools that when things like that start to happen, how can we stop that from happening? And we use a mental trigger, and we use the animal is the mental trigger of that. And the crocodile, the reason we use that is it's the most adaptive animal in really kind of history. It dates back to the dinosaur ages, but it has the ability to lower its heartbeat to 1 or 2 beats a minute. It's got dual eye lenses that allow it to see in muddy waters. It can do some amazing, amazing things in its ability to adapt. And we call that animal RESPA, RESPA. And if you remember a couple of Super Bowls ago, New England was coming back in overtime, one of the great, and some critical players that were involved in that scored the winning touchdown. When Dave Austin, as I was mentioning earlier, when we were talking about it, is like going, what was the key to that? And they said, man, it was just a RESPA moment. That's all it is. So the R stands for just kind of relax. It's 3 deep breaths. And if you'll take 3 deep breaths in the moment of that high intensity, your physiology will change. So 3 deep breaths. I mean, three deep breaths. The E stands for evaluate. Have I really evaluated the conditions and circumstances as facts or truth? And have I made them a mountain out of a molehill? The S is strategize. What can I do? There's always something we can do. Now, what is that really, and what are those things? And then the P is a pause. Now, in the world of athletics, it's a millisecond. I mean, it's just instantaneous almost. For others of us, like me, it may be 24 hours. It could be a week. It could be a month that I need to pause because I'm kind of like you. I wear my emotions on my sleeve. So I really have to maybe take 20 deep breaths instead of those 3s again. But that pause is just, did I miss anything? And then whenever I verify what I've verified, then we act. That's the A, is act or attack mode. But whenever we go through that time and time again, I don't have to go RESPA. What's the R, the ESPA? I just see the crocodile in my body. We've done it enough now. We'll immediately just take 3 deep breaths and mellow out so that I'm responding versus a reaction, an animalistic reaction, even though we're using animals as a trigger. But those are just some key components that in the moment of high stress, how can we control our emotions so that we think rationally and that we make the best decision, just not a decision or a reaction that gets us or compounds the complexity and makes a bad situation even worse.
Yeah, and I think that's being Italian, that's something that I had to learn quite a bit was right. To take a step back. But I think that a lot of times you fight internally in your head as well, right?
Right.
And so all the books that are out there, Positive Intelligence, War of Art. There's some beautiful books that do that, but you've got that constant naysayer in your brain, fighting the conscious and unconscious. That's seems to say, see, you weren't supposed to do that, or see, you weren't right. supposed to be successful in that. Talk about that. We've got about 3 minutes.
Yeah, when you think about that conscious unconscious, the unconscious mind is perfect. You and I are together and we're amped up and we've got some positive things happening in our lives. we go back and there's that quiet voice waiting that says the judgment. And it will go back to whenever we're 3 years old, 5 years old, 10, 20, whatever the case is, to prove itself right. And the key components of the conscious versus the unconscious side of that is, who am I? Do I have a clue of where I really am? More importantly, where am I going? And what filter am I using that through? Am I going and reverting back to a comfort zone, even though that's where I don't want to be? Or am I advancing confidently in the direction of the dream of where I do want to be? And the unknowing piece of that, if we don't know where we're headed, when conditions and circumstances come, what the last stimulus that comes into our mind validates the unconscious side. So that unconscious mind, it isn't there to sabotage us. It's there to actually serve us and protect us. But it's protecting us in a way that we don't want to be anymore. So the reprogramming of that is what actually has to come forth. And we probably oversimplify it to a certain degree is, what is the vision we have for our lives? How do we take an inventory of where here is? The second part is what is there? Do we have a clear mosaic painting in our mind of what we really want? It personally, professionally, financially, what's our relationships look like? What's our spiritual growth? Whatever that case might be. But as we look through that, if we haven't painted there, really all of the information that we get, every book that we read, can't get us from here to there because we don't know what action to take. And any action, any road will get us somewhere, but it isn't going to get us where we go. So we want to feed that conscious side of us as we go into that subconscious. When it comes up to play, we can't get rid of it, but we can quiet it down so much that we can't hear it anymore. And that positive side of the being, who we're being in that moment, starts to take over, and then the next step starts to present itself going forward.
Yeah, when we talk about energy and being amped up, I mean, I can feel the energy drain right now of not being at an IMC, surrounded by you guys, or coming back from Costa Rica, or that kind of stuff, and I peak and valley. So we'll talk about that when we come back from break. You're listening to the Work-Life Balance. And we're back to the Work-Life Balance. We're speaking today with the founder and owner of the McAuliffe Group, as well as an executive director of the John Maxwell team, founding member of the John Maxwell team, Mark McAuliffe. And so, Mark, right before we were going to break, we were laughing a little bit there about the energy, though. But do you find it the same way? I mean, for some, I'm truly an extrovert, and so people think that because you're an extrovert, that means you're the guy on stage going, going crazy. And really, it's just I'm getting my energy from the people that are around me, and so I feel like I feel like I'm just an energy suck when I'm at JMT, because I'm just feeding off the energy that's there, and I can ride that energy for a good 2 months. And then I just start to feel that fall off. And right now, like I am at a low point in terms of energy. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, whenever you think about energy, I mean, we're all energetic beings. I mean, we're spiritual beings gifted with the intellect, having a human experience. I mean, we're wearing a meat suit, really. So when we think about if everything is energy, and we get around people, especially extroverted people like us, I mean, very outgoing, very dynamic, and very people-oriented, that is what really kind of feeds our bucket. And when we're in that environment, it really is the fuel that keeps us going. And we can have highs and lows and spikes back and forth. And it's really kind of what stands between where people are and where they want to go is the consistency of that. There's fast starters, and then they stop, and then they end. But, that energy, that need to have that human experience, especially for entrepreneurs or people, or I experienced that myself. And, when I moved my office from a corporate environment to home office, thinking I was going to do the best thing for my family, man, when they got home, I was just a mess because I needed that human interaction, even though I was on the phone, but we'll talk about the perpetual transmutation of radiant energy. I mean, it's all energy. You can't begin it or end it. It just transforms, and we morph it, or it transitions from one to the other. But, knowing that is a very powerful thing. Not everybody has that awareness. So the fact that you do have that awareness is key. And how do we now manage that? And whenever we sense that going down, that's where that inner circle really comes to play, is that, hey, I need a phone call. I need a shot in the arm. I need Zoom is magnificent for that, because I get the audio and I get the visual piece now, to where, hey, I can't get an IMC. I can't get 3,000 people, 2,000 people around, but I can get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. and get that injection that keeps me going a little bit each and every day. So who we surround ourselves, the books we read, the information we need, will sustain that energy going forward. And if not, if we find ourselves in a spot where, maybe the friends and loved ones in our family aren't necessarily seeing things we see, that's another invaluable aspect of a coach. They can be that community, they can be that support, they can be that person to say, hey, let's wake up here. The cattle prod sometimes is the most effective coaching tool that there is, just to give a jolt of energy to get us going too. But it's really it's a mental shift, because the energy is positive or negative, and we're kind of choosing which way we're allowing ourselves to go down that path.
I'm going to pivot to something you just said there, because I can remember being, a younger manager. As a matter of fact, in 2010, and a good friend of mine that's a participant on the Zoom right now, we went through this Leadership Institute master's class. And at that point, I'd started my own business. We were profitable in the first year. I was feeling pretty good about myself. And they were paying for a coaching session for us. So it wasn't that we actively went and sought a coach. It was just like, here's a coach. And I was like, man, what's this guy going to tell me? You know what I mean? And I think a lot of people have that mental block about seeking a coach or seeking that. And I'll tell you, when I finally got on the phone with this guy, it was probably one of the greatest hours I've ever spent in my entire life. It was amazing of what he revealed in just an hour. And so it turned into coaching sessions for a long term with me and him. Did you have that mental block before you sought out to be a coach, or was that just something you had already seen? Or talk a little bit about the experience of transitioning to a coach.
Yeah, well, I think for me, it's been a journey and an evolution. I've been a personal growth and development junkie since I was mid-teens. I was very fortunate, had a tumultuous upbringing, but I had an uncle that was very much into real estate and introduced me to Zig Ziglar and Dennis Waitley and a variety of thought leaders at the time and for sales. So became part of that process. And yet at the same time, I always wanted to make a lot of money. And I had some events in my life, never get married, never have kids, never move back to Missouri and make a lot of money and pursue that. And for 22 years, that was my search, really, is how much success could I get? How much stuff, materialism, things of that nature. And yet there was a longing. I mean, when my phone rings now, and I'll kind of switch to coaching as an example of that. When my phone rings, it isn't whenever somebody's got everything going Mach 2 and everything is perfect. I mean, they're getting contacts, they're getting clients, the money's flowing, everything is perfect. They don't need help from anybody because they are just told. Usually when my phone rings, it's either a DEFCON 3 scenario, or they're just kind of in a funk. I'm stuck and I can't get out of it. Or there's been this level of success, but they've got a longing. There's a longing or a discontent, one of the two things. And I was in a longing scenario. I'm checking off the boxes of what I thought I was supposed to achieve, but it was never enough. The adrenaline junkie, okay, we're going to go shark diving. Now we're going to go great white diving. Now we got to go great white diving outside the cage because we had to one up. It was never enough. And for many of the clients that I work with, especially busy executives or business owners, they're looking for success, but what they're really looking for is success and significance. What are the values? What is my legacy? What am I really looking towards? And then as we start to uncouple that, in many instances, it isn't even a success and significance, because most of us live, it's a success or significance lifestyle. It's an or versus an ampersand. And I physically give people an and sign, an ampersand sign, put it on your desk. It's the this and philosophy versus a this or. And then ultimately, if we go after that significance piece and we do it long enough, really the beautiful thing that comes out about that is fulfillment. That is what we really long for. And for me, that stuckness really was one of those pieces of no matter what I did, no matter what I accomplished, the ability to celebrate that or stay with it used to be a couple of days. Then it was a day. Then it was literally an hour. And then it would just be minutes and say, okay, what's next? And it was personally, it was professionally, it was spiritually, it was every aspect of my life. So absolutely, I definitely experienced that. And it was one of the things whenever I found the breakthrough that was a critical, pivotal moment in my life of going, okay, this that I've spent 22 years pursuing is no longer going to serve me. when I've got this greater calling that I need to, who I needed to become, the things I needed to do so that I could have that fulfillment that I really desired.
And so that leads us to so many people then settle, A, not looking for success, and B, never finding significance. And so why do people often choose, I see it as choosing an easy way versus pushing, through, but why do people, I have a big thing that I do between, everybody wants to succeed, but do they have the will? And
Right.
so why do people settle? What's the psyche of that? And how do you help people with that settling portion?
Sure. Well, I think there's a couple of things. One is we're unaware, number one. Number two is I think that there's a greater pulling. The fact that we were created by a divine intervention, I mean, like I talked about, we're all spiritual beings. We're connected. That's where that radiant energy kind of feeds itself and kind of comes through one another. Spiritual being gifted with an intellect and having a human experience. But if we look at that as we were all designed to long, to be, do, and have more in life. And based upon the programming of what we've been brought up with, it's no, don't do that. You're not smart enough, good looking enough. You weren't born on the right side of the tracks. You don't have this. I mean, it's a inventory of what we don't have versus, hey, you were perfectly made. You're perfectly designed and created. And whenever that longing, that discontent, one of the things we look at is, we're often guided by a feather. Here's a little tickle that's a nudge, that little, I've got this feeling, this intuition. And then if the feather doesn't do it, sometimes we get a 2x4, sometimes across the back, sometimes across the forehead. And then we get a ton of bricks. If that one doesn't work, a ton of bricks falls on us. And those are the transition points that we often see. And then we have to make a critical decision. And for me, obviously, I was so Irish thick-headed that it wasn't a feather or 2x4 or a ton of bricks. God had to send a F-250 to run me over on a bicycle ride to get my attention. But, that why do we settle is, one, we don't know any better. Two, it's what's safe. Three, it's what we know. And that's why it's so critical to seek out good mentors or coaches or people that have done something that we long to have, because it isn't there any better. Excuse me. I had to cough there. Pardon me. I was trying to hit the mute button, didn't get to it fast enough. But it isn't that they're any better. It's just their thinking about it is so different. And that's one of the things I love about the coaching piece, is that it isn't that I have the answers. I don't have very few, if any, answers whatsoever. But I can ask the questions that nobody else is willing to ask, and allowing us to stay with it long enough that you now connect to that which you're really truly called to be. And then that starts to unfold, and that unstuckness, that unsettling piece really starts to get quiet, and the possibility side of us really starts to seek and emerge itself going forward.
Yeah. So for me, as we look at stuck and unstuck, as we look at want and will, and again, it's still a daily fight, right?
Right.
I think what I relate to most often, and it's a quote by, I believe, somebody we're both certified for, but I love what Dr. Rome says, is that you continue to get tests, and they're not pass or fail tests, right? It's until you learn your lesson. And
Right.
I've absolutely loved that. That's something that I've kept in my brain, is that life's going to keep sending you the same situation over and over until you learn from it. And if you
That's
haven't
right.
learned, you're just going to get it again. And I think that's an amazing perspective. So we're going to take another break right here and let some commercials play so we can pay for the work-life balance with Rick Morris. We'll be right back. And we are back to the work-life balance. It's so good to have you guys listening to us. Obviously, on Voice America, you've been such a great supporter to us, but there's so many ways to interact with the show now. So just to keep you abreast of all the ways that you obviously can download all of our shows as podcasts on iTunes or Android or any of your favorite podcasting series. Just search the Work-Life Balance. You can ask Alexa to play the latest version of the Work-Life Balance, and she'll play that for you. We have it now live on Zoom, so you can interact with us directly during the show, and also on Facebook Live. And then on Saturdays, we post the video on YouTube. So just search the Work-Life Balance on YouTube, and you'll be able to catch the show. If you've missed any of these nuggets that Mark has been sharing with us, you're definitely going to want to go back and catch those. So coming back to the show with Mark McAuliffe here, So, Mark, we were just talking into the break, and we've shared a lot of stuff. But what would you say if I was going to be coming to you as a coach? What's one of the real keys to going after that life of significance?
Yeah, I think there's multiple things, but in today's society, and for many decades now, it's if I have all the toys, he who with the most toys wins. Is kind of reframing that. If I have everything, then I'll do something good with my life, and then I'll be somebody. Is reversing that, and I love ice cream, so I use an ice cream cone as kind of the visual aid of this. Is that the ice cream cone is a V? So what's the vision of the life we really long to have? The second part of that is about being. John Maxwell teaches in the law of magnetism is, we don't get what we want out of life; we get what we are. So have we been honest with ourselves on where he really is, number one, and who we're being in the moment, and who we're being for some time versus who we'd like to be? And that there's a gap there. There's a knowing and a doing gap component of that. I'll come back to that. And whenever we do that, if we can really get clear on who we're being and who we need to be and who we want to become and who we long to become, that's the thing necessary to be able to do and become that person. Then you'll have the things that you want to have by default. So the first step is really take an inventory spiritually on a scale of 1 to 10. Where are we? And if people are interested, I've got a tool to help them do this. If they like, they can send an email and just say Rick Morris fan, and I'll be happy to send it to them. But taking inventory, where are we spiritually on a scale of 1 to 10? Where are we relationally? Where are we financially? Where are we vocationally, career-wise? Where are we? And for some, we don't know what a 10 looks like because we stopped dreaming somewhere around the 4th or 5th grade when the teacher started yelling at us, hey, pay attention. Get your head out of the clouds. Start paying attention. And now we started studying to pass an exam versus thinking. So we stopped that, and we stopped the dreaming of things. And this is a life permission to begin to think and start to dream again in life. And really craft, if this is a 5 and I can't think of what living at a 10 is, well, let's just imagine what a 6 is. And what's the crystal clear? Can we feel it? Can we taste it? Can we smell it? Can we touch it? Because our mind doesn't differentiate between a vividly imagined experience and a real life one. And as we start to paint that vision, it's really painting the video, not the video, but it writes the script of the film of the rest of our lives. And then we just have to step into it. But if we haven't cast that characters, if we haven't set that scene and painted it effectively, we can't step into it. I can believe it for you, and I can see it for you, but I can't see it for me because there's too many other things going on. So taking that inventory, and then secondly, stop worrying about the knowledge and start focusing on the critical few. And we use LASPRO, which is a falcon, because it can go 245 miles an hour and, hit the target from 30,000 feet in the air or however high it is. But LASPRO is really laser focus on the critical few things each day. What are the 3 things I need to do to be able to become who I am? Is it study? Is it talk? Is it communicate? Is it connect? Is it journal? Whatever that may be. And then keeping the critical few. We've got so many things going on. We got Facebook. We've got social media. We've got calendars. We've got to-do lists. We've got intentions. We've got kids, parents, clients that actually want us to deliver what we said we were going to deliver. All these different things in our life, and getting real critical and disciplined around what those critical few things are. And then ultimately, the litmus test on that, Simon Sinek does it so well. We start with why. What's my purpose? And people, it's the number one question asked of pastors and priests globally around the world is, why am I here and what's my purpose? And sometimes that's too big of a question to ask. So what are you most passionate about? And it doesn't mean you have to quit your job. Maybe your job provides the financial resources that allows you to follow that passion. But in becoming that person, without going through those steps, kind of delayering the onion one layer at a time, that's the key component of getting from here to there, is taking what step I can be, because we don't know the next 10 steps. We may think we do, or maybe you don't know them at all, and I may think I do, but until you take that first one, we don't know what the second one looks like. It's kind of the moment in time of where I am versus where I want to be. I call it the moment. And when he's searching for the Holy Achievement, there's a big cliff, and you look down, and he's either going to take a step and land on something, he's going to take a step and fall and plant himself in the ground, or 3, he's going to fall and grow wings and fly out of there. It's the first step he finds out that the path has been there all along, but until he took the first one, there was no way of knowing where he was going to go. So that process it's an intellectual process to a degree. It's a visioning exercise, but at the same time, those are the critical components. And then the discipline to stay focused and keep somebody that will keep you in support, accountability, and not allow you to go down that spiral of negativity when the yoga to life hits that fan, and really stay true to who you are and separating facts versus that truth. And that's really what the life coaching aspect, and that's what I love the most. I do a lot of business consulting and a lot of business strategies, but for that success and significance piece, without taking those 3 steps of knowing where we are, where we want to go, and then the actions that we need to take each step of the way, I haven't found for myself or anybody else that they actually end up getting there. Because if they have success by default, it does not stick. And if you're not living your vision and your dream, you're living somebody else's. So if we're going to be here, we might as well be living our own. So painting that picture as vividly as we can, and then taking each step along the way, the next one shows up.
Yeah, and I think you said something really prominent, and I want to make sure that we don't gloss over. And it's something that I've really started to dive into really, I'd say the last year and a half, but it is the power of visualization and painting the picture in your mind of where you want to be, where you want to go. And a lot of people think, there's been things like The Secret that's come out, all these different things, but everything is still based on, if you go back to Napoleon Hill, right? It's that power of and the power of transmutation of energy, as you said, and the power of visualization. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, when you get that burning desire and walking in faith, going back to the example I used with kind of Indiana Jones, is we've got an energetic pull. We can't get to something. So if I put a rope between you and me, and I tried to get to you with a rope, if I start going towards you, it just pushes and it doesn't do anything. Yet if I know where you are and I want to be that, if I transmute myself to the person that's at the end of that rope, what's the thing I need to do? I actually pull the old me to the new me, and that's how the rope gets us from point A to point B. We can't get to it, but we can come from it. And that's that whole being part of that aspect. Number one. Number two, when we start to really look at science today, in that LASPRO point that I talked about before, what are the critical few things that we need to be focused on? And, whether you look at the Genome Project, if you take a look at the science and the neurosciences that are going on, it's a magnificent, it's wondrous, just a beautiful world. It's something that I think is real key in understanding who we are, where we're being, what we're thinking, is they have determined that the number one thing that performance groups do is they stay in that zone, they stay in that flow. And if we can improve 10% of staying in the zone, there's actually up to a increase in productivity that comes from the world's top performers. And that blew my mind, that just staying in what we used to call the zone, now it's called flow, that energy of staying in that moment, of having the inner energies that you've talked about, of really kind of draining versus filling us, taking an inventory. Are we around people that drain and suck the life out of us? Where do we find things energizing? When we go into work, do we hate it the moment we come in? It's kind of a 5-minute step or a 5-step process to testing the dream that you have. Once we painted that dream, once we got the energy that we think we're going to do something, we're going to go somewhere, is number one, does it motivate us? When we wake up in the morning, our feet hit the ground, are we passionate about it? Number two, is there good in it for other people? 3, does it align with our values? 4, do we need help from a higher power? If it's something I already know that I can do, it's just a discipline problem. But if it's a stretch, if it's something I don't know, I'm going to need help from somebody else in a group, or maybe it's God, universe, whatever your belief system is. For me, it's God. Holy cow, this is a big thing. It kind of scares the bejesus out of us. That's when we know we're on the right track. And then last but not least, does it cause me to grow? Where am I coming from and how am I going? So those pieces of that in that LASPRO piece is, what are the critical few things that we need to do as we go down that path, have become very, very scientifically proven that if we can stay in that energetically sweet spot, what are the things I don't need to be doing? Who can I delegate it to? And as a solopreneur, sometimes you can't because you're it. But that's where talking to you is saying, hey, why are you transcribing that for $24 a month? I get 4 hours of transcription and you're paying $1 a minute getting toasted, or Dave Gambrell, that you just interviewed Dave. And this kind of goes back to anybody that's not taking your program right now on the mentorship side of things. All of these things that we're talking about, that's the benefit of working with somebody like you that's done that. They're nuts not for taking advantage of that, especially for the price point of it. But those are the things that if we can just increase 10% of our time in the sweet spot where only we can do what we're doing, and it's the best of the best that we can do, a 10, 20, 30, 40, 50% increase has been proven scientifically, and they used Google's highest performing work groups as one of the test markets for it. Just think of the impact financially, relationally, spiritually that would have if you could stay in there just 10 more percent.
That's amazing. Well, we're going to take our final break right here. We'll be right back with Mark McAuliffe. You're listening to The Work-Life Balance with Rick Morris.
Balance.
So as we're coming back from break, we were getting a little dance break. If you're on live with us, you could have seen Mark jamming to our tunes. And, of course, we always got to give a shout-out every once in a while to the beat makers there. That's from The Party. I actually own that track. Only cost me $250,000 to make it. So super excited to be able to use that on the radio show. So coming back to Mark McAuliffe, talking about only focus on the things that you do well. Going in as a music producer, not a great business decision on my part, but made great lifelong friends and learned tons of lessons. But in any case, coming back, how do people get in touch with you? How do people reach out to you and start to learn about your services?
Yeah, there's a couple different ways. We're actually going through an entire rebranding that you're aware of that I'm actually behind on. But the easiest way is send me a note. It's Mark, M-A-R-K, at themcauliffegroup.com. And that's number one. Or you can go to www.themcauliffegroup.com. That'll take you to the webpage, and actually it will show you, it will come up on the leadership side. And we're rebranding a new one for markmcauliffe.com, soon to come out. But the McAuliffegroup.com is the best website to go to right now, and it's more of a leadership website. The personal development site on Mark McAuliffe is soon to be released. But that's the two easiest ways. Or shoot me the McAuliffe Group on Facebook, and LinkedIn is always an alternative as well.
Outstanding. We've got a lot of those links already on the webpage for the radio show. So if you click on the radio show, you can find those links for Mark. So Mark, one of the questions we ask every one of our guests, what's some of the best advice you've ever received?
Oh, man. I think that comes season of life. When my first year, 25 years of age, it was one thing. My second 25, and as we go through that. But I think right now, it was more of a question than it was an advice. And it kind of goes to a personality that's like mine, that's kind of very outgoing and kind of adrenaline junkie. Was, am I telling a story to impress, or am I telling a story to connect? And why am I doing what I'm doing? And then the second thing is, if you want to be the most interesting person in the room, be the most interested person in the room. And that was a humbling aspect, and that's what I say about John is, being in Patrick Lencioni talks about it in his Ideal Team Players, having humble, hungry, and smart people. And that humbleness, when I was raised about being humble, that was a sign of weakness, man. You fell to prey, and people would take advantage, either physically beat the Jesus out of you, or take advantage of you to where you spend $250,000 for a jingle on a music cabinet. But that willingness to be humble, your ability to be transparent, and you model that very, very well. The law of the picture. But be willing to be humble. Be willing to let people see the flaws and the warts and the mistakes, because hey, we're all in this together, and there was only one perfect person, and in my opinion, and they paid the ultimate price for us. But other than that, am I using that perfection as a defensive mechanism and a shield to hide behind, versus being genuine and authentic and loving and caring and a humble person. But so it'd be to not impress, but to be a humble, loving, and caring man for my family, for my friends, and for my business associates. And my business has benefited greatly from trying to follow that more and more each day.
I appreciate that. So do you have any final parting words for the listeners?
Yeah, I think that the final thing that I would probably say is that the knowing versus doing gap, the challenge out there right now is I'm going to read a book a week. I'm going to read 52 books this year, or 200, or whatever the case may be. That's fantastic, and I encourage people to always read. But if you were going to take the next 30 days, pick the next 90 days, and pick 2 areas of your life that if you could just change those 2 things and up them by 1 point on a scale of 1 to 10, that would transform every aspect of your life, what would it be? And if you don't know, are you willing to ask Rick, or do you have somebody else? And if I can add value in any way, I'd be happy to do that. But Rick is just a beautiful human being inside and out, and knowledge and wisdom and his heart to give for your audience. They're already paying attention to you because they tuned into the radio show. But if you're really got a longing or a discontent, you owe it to yourself to stop debating it, to stop thinking, and to take action and bet on yourself by either signing up for your program, reaching out and just saying, hey, I don't know, what can I do? And that is so critical in life about making the shift from here to there, is the willingness to ask, to seek, and to knock, and not judge ourselves for if it doesn't turn out right. And the quote by Eric Hoffer, we think well of ourselves in rare moments, and we need other people to come in and really kind of support us on that. But if now's the time, we're almost halfway through the year, so those 2 things for the third quarter coming up: identify what they are, what you'd love to have experience out of that. Find somebody to support you, hold you accountable. And if you don't know what that is, by all means, you got Rick right there, and you need to step in into knowing that, and reaching out and let them hold you accountable, support you, and give you a chance if you need to going forward.
Well, listen, man, I appreciate you coming on to the show. I'm always going to cherish Costa Rica. I don't think the experience would have been the same without having you there. But look forward to Orlando. Look forward to seeing you again, my friend. And thank you so much for sharing this time with the audience and sharing your knowledge with us. We certainly appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate the time. Thank you for the opportunity, and bless you and everybody that's on your channel and listening.
Absolutely. So next week we've got Paul Gustafson's going to be on the show. Maybe you can give us a joke or inside something for Paul, but Paul's going to be on the show next week for us. Week after that, we've got Mike O'Brocta. So Mike, we had pitched on the show before, and he had a travel delay, but Mike O'Brocta is the real life Q. He actually makes the gadgets for the CIA. He's a project manager for that. He's a hilarious guy. He's got a new book out, so he's going to be joining us as well. And then we just booked this person, but June 8th, we're going to have Melissa Agnes on it. She does Is Your Brand Ready for Crisis Mode? So she's going to be on the show on June 8th. So we've got some great shows coming up. We want to make sure that you guys continue to listen to us right here in the Work-Life Balance of the Voice America Business Network. Stay tuned to the network for the next show. We always appreciate you guys. You can always find me at Rick A. Morris on Twitter, at www.rickamorris.com. You can hit rmorris at rsquareconsulting.com or rick@rickamorris.com. And we'd be happy to hear your feedback. If you think you'd make a great guest on this show, reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you.
Thank you for joining us this week. The Work-Life Balance with Rick Morris can be heard live every Friday at 2 p.m. Pacific Time and 5 p.m. Eastern Time on the Voice America Business Channel. Now that the weekend is here, it's time to rethink your priorities and enjoy it. We'll see you on our next show.